Do you remember when metal was actually heavy? A style of music and culture that was grimy, edgy, at times unlistenable, and wholly dedicated to those who sat within the outskirts of society. It stemmed from a sound that was genuine, a reflection of poverty, political strife, and God forbid, growing up in Birmingham. Those days are long gone. If you look at the mainstream metal landscape today, you are presented with a sea of commercially safe and universally appealing metal bands, all utilizing the same non-offensive tones and differentiating themselves from each other by wearing thirst trap Halloween costumes. This has infected each and every corner of the subculture, from merch to journalism to concerts. The vast majority of influencers within the scene soy face at every breakdown and truly believe that listening to the most successful artists within the metal landscape is an act of rebellion, simply because these bands get well-deserved hate online for the absolute dog shit they violently spit onto streaming services. This can all be defended under the guise of rage bait, sure, but when there are literal Funko Pops of artists that used to scare the ever-loving shit out of boomers less than 30 years ago, it's hard to ignore the monumental cultural shift. It's what I define as the Disneyification of metal. As this egotistical bold man so eloquently put it, Sleep Token makes music for Disney adults, which unironically might be one of the best things he's said in years. I fully agree with this statement, but I believe it goes further than just Sleep Token. The entire mainstream metal landscape is beginning to reflect the culture of Disney, inoffensive, style over substance slop that aims to appeal to the most soy within our society. It's clear that this all stems from money, as the typical soy facer is far more likely to buy a Slipknot Funko Pop than any functioning member of our society. But I believe there are more underlying issues we can explore that may explain why mainstream metal has become so sleep-inducingly inoffensive. Sleep Token inducingly inoffensive. I didn't write that, that's a shit joke. What am I talking about? Alright, just to get ahead of the comments, I'm clearly talking about mainstream metal in this video. I'm fully aware that the underground is still good and reflects what the genre should be. I'm aware you don't need to remind me in every fucking video that covers mainstream metal. Another comment I get, I am not an old thing good, new thing bad type of motherfucker. I truly believe that music is in the best place it's ever been right now. I'm simply discussing a specific topic with information that relates to that specific topic, you fucking lizards. So before I receive that dreaded cortisol spike, let's actually define what Disneyification is. The term describes the commercial transition of entertainment or environments into something simplified, controlled, and safe. Disney does this with everything they get their greasy, money-stained mitts on. Take something authentic, sand down every edge, and sell it to the average consumer without any risk of them ever feeling threatened. So why do I believe that mainstream metal has become a Disney amalgamation of slop and inoffensive bollocks that only appeals to the lowest common denominator? Well, there are many reasons. The best place to start would be the sound, Exhibit A if you'd prefer. The guitar tone is perhaps the backbone of heavy music, stemming back to the late 60s. Even further back, but yeah. In the past, achieving the desired tone was a war between budget, technology limitations, and the calcified, stubborn brain of the average musician. Black Sabbath is the most effective example. If Tony Iommi had fingertips, metal as we know it would perhaps cease to exist. The factory accident that sliced them motherfuckers off forced him to utilize banjo strings on his guitar, creating a slacked tension and therefore growl that no digital pedal can replicate. There was no neural DSP plugin packed with thousands of distortion presets in the 60s. Iommi had to quite literally modify his amplifier, pushing it to the point of collapse. Everything was messy, experimental, nothing was quantized or pitch corrected, and this created the danger that is most commonly attributed to metal. We can even go back earlier to perhaps the birth of distortion as we know it, with You Really Got Me by the Kinks. The motherfucker literally slashed the shit out of his amplifier to achieve the desired tone. If we compare that to the modern landscape, the method of creation and therefore outcome is night and day. In the 56 years since Black Sabbath first blasted onto the airways, shit has changed a lot. In regards to music, I'd say the most influential change would be the development of technology. We could go on for hours yapping about streaming services and Fruity Loops and type beats, but the most relevant piece of technology would be guitar pedals, digital amps, and the way in which musicians typically record guitar. Plugins like Neural DSP have mathematically perfected what a distortion tone should sound like. A musician just has to plug their guitar into their crusty ass Focusrite Scarlett, record, slap on a glossy preset, and be done with it. That's obviously a massive oversimplification, but you get my point. Not only are these plugins mix ready, but also often packaged with a shimmer that removes the mud mud entirely. To a normal mix within music, mud is bad. But metal isn't supposed to be normal music. I think we can all agree on that. The popularity and ease of this technology removes the imperfection and replaces it with a modern pop gloss that curses the vast majority of these modern metal bands. It appeals to not only streaming services, but the vapid soy metal fan within the modern day. To explain this with an idiotic metaphor, look at this beautiful monkey. If every monkey in the jungle was this beautiful, they'd all look the same. There would be no beauty, and everything would be boring. Now imagine if each of these monkeys was a robot and the metaphor continues to fall apart. What I'm trying to say is the mud of the past created density and friction, signaling danger and risk within the music. When every metal song utilizes pop gleam, it's harder to differentiate a quote-unquote metal song with top 40 pop slop. Everything becomes a professional product, the musical equivalent of a Marvel film where everything is perfectly lit and fucking boring. The same argument can be presented towards drums. Quantized and gridded will always sound more commercial than sloppy and human. Drummers like Bill Ward created natural tension through human mistakes. Modern engineers snap every drum hit to a perfect mathematical grid. And that doesn't even mention the effect on experimentation that these plugins can have. But luckily I mentioned it in this video in regards to shoegaze, and the same thing applies. So I'm going to play some inserts in this video to explain further. When I write, I'm usually stimmed to and get carried away with simplifications and metaphors that make me laugh but don't make any sense. So not all bands that fit into this category use neural DSP or even like digital amps, but they all do use vast amounts of technology that was not available in the 60s. Basically every modern mainstream metal recording utilizes some form of digital technology, whether it's direct to plug-in recording or tone matching or whatever. This may seem good for experimentation, but it is often the case that when humans are given infinite options, they don't become more creative, they become more anxious and eventually just settle for the most popular or safe choice, which explains the tone. The neural DSP is just a funny example because Tim Henson makes me laugh and it's kind of sexy. I also didn't want to go into the kind of experimentation topic more in this video because I did go into it in my shoegaze video, but not everybody's seen it, so there we go. I may seem like a brain-dented hater, and maybe I am, but research literally shows that mathematically perfect music gets perceived in our brain as background noise, easy to consume, and it kills the idea of music as a living, threatening piece of art. You know, the shit that actually made metal appealing to begin with. There is a reason these musicians wear edgy masks and sing about demonic concepts whilst feeling about as threatening as the dragon ride at Legoland Windsor. That shit was fucking sick, by the way, shout out. Everything is too clean and consistent. A sound that thrived off of pushing the limits of what heavy music could even be, getting turned into a non-offensive product that's safe for the masses. And whilst we're on the topic of demonic masks, let's move on to Exhibit B, the image. In the context of Disney, a product or character can't be successful unless it can be franchised. Mickey Mouse is slapped on everything because he's appealing, not just because of his vast history, but his aesthetic and instantly recognizable silhouette. In the context of metal, this reflects the bands and artists who no longer want to be people, and instead are turning themselves into corporate assets for not only the marketing of their sound, but the sheer monetary benefits that come with the persona. If you look towards the most popular metal bands in the modern day, the vast majority will be packaged with stylized masks, costumes, or some form of visual gimmick. This has always happened, but in the modern day it feels way more commercial. The reason for this is obvious. It's much easier to trademark the visual aesthetic of a mask than the human face. And it also means the band can become immortal. A mask doesn't age, a mask doesn't get herpes, and a mask only evolves when the marketing team behind the band decides it's a good idea. A clear example is Slipknot. The band that started as countercultural, frightening, and dangerous has morphed into perhaps the most Disneyfied band of them all. Slipknot is now a business, a touring stage act, if you will. This video explains exactly why in more detail. The masks have become so beneficial to the financial aspects of the band that they have literally said in interviews that they plan to keep Slipknot going even when all the original members leave and pass away, and there's not really many of them left. And this is only possible due to their visual image. Sleep Token is the modern example of this, and is an incredibly interesting piece of the puzzle.
Oh my god. That is the best monkey puzzle tree I've ever fucking seen in my life. Look at the shape of it. It's perfect. Oh my god, I can't believe to fucking... And there's a DeLorean from Back to the Future.
As their rise coincides with the explosion of short-form social media marketing. I truly believe that the massive surge of Sleep Token wasn't based on their music, but instead their visual image. As soon as fucking Vessel hit the degeneracy of BookTok, there was no going back. These communities are infatuated with dark romance. They love the aesthetic of the monster, the dangers of the mask, and unfortunately this often strays into sexual territories. It's edgy, yes, but it's safe edgy. A curated persona that almost feels like it's designed for 15-second thirst trap edits. Specific research into masks portrays it as a blank canvas. This concept has been around since their motherfucking ancient Greeks. It essentially defines the audience member's ability to place their own desires onto the character because it's a blank canvas. Because Vessel is purposely vague and mysterious, each gooner can sexualize him in their own way. They can create their own story, their own parasocial relationship, selling the product and therefore music to a wider and more diverse demographic. Very similar to the way in which Disney markets their characters, only like quite a bit more fucking horny. And if you are interested in the psychology of the Sleep Token / BookTok fan, I'm creating an exclusive video for the Patreon that covers that, alongside various other spicy topics such as the sexual psychology of the goth grifter and Joe Rogan's transition into a cult leader. The Patreon is basically the less Disneyfied version of me. I don't need to adapt my scripts to monetization guidelines, so check it out, it's the best way to support me. Even the way in which bands like Sleep Token package their music reflects the Marvel Cinematic Universe more so than a countercultural genre based on aggression. Sleep Token uses purposeful mysteries, sigils, cryptic messaging and lore. Fans are encouraged to decode all of this, all whilst using metaphors that are as boneheaded as Stick to Me like caramel. Not the fucking. No, there's no fucking. Sleep Token fans, don't be fucking. The actual messaging in the music doesn't matter. It's only the lore. It encourages fans to spend more time with the band. And this is another tactic utilized by Disney. Marvel fans are often found in their crusty basements scrubbing through films, trailers, and end credit scenes in search for the all-knowing Easter egg. Sleep Token fans do the same. And in reality, all that is happening is an increase in streaming numbers and merch sales. The concerts are no different, whether it be Sleep Token, Slipknot, these shows are ridiculously choreographed. I had a friend that went to the recent Download Festival in the UK. He mentioned how the main stage was plastered with fake rocks and theatrical bullshit the entire day, just to prepare for Sleep Token's headlining set. He also mentioned that half the crowd left as soon as Vessel started spouting out his horny bollocks on stage, but that doesn't particularly matter, it's just funny. But the theatrics of the show do. So the stage was plastered with fake rocks in a similar way to how Disney uses fake rust and space bollocks to make you feel like you're in Star Wars at one of their many dystopian theme parks. These set pieces are used to immerse you in the lore, an artificial escape from the reality of being at a disgusting British music festival. And guess what? This is on purpose. Shows used to be a place of unpredictable chaos. Now it's as if everything is planned. And this is the mainstream metal bands. I know that underground metal shows are still unpredictable. Concerts are paced in a way that almost allows for the posting of TikToks, something that reflects a highly planned stage show more than a concert. Vessel doesn't really interact. There is no chance for any spontaneity unless one of them like trips and like breaks their fucking leg on stage. The lights, the pyro, it all connotes an essence of danger and edge. But when everything is locked into a digital grid and primed for build up and payoff, it's just Disney slop. Let's move on to Exhibit C, the commercial aspects of the band, the metal gift shop if you will. Look at this Slipknot Funko Pop, Def Leppard, Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, fucking Rob Halford. Realistically, all I really need to do to explain this section is just show these plastic pieces of slop, but I will yap to you regardless. The Funko Pop isn't the reason for the Disneyification of metal. It's more so one of its many consequences. Frightening icons within the genre have been turned into fucking desk toys. It connotes that metal as a brand is now safe enough to sit next to Baby Yoda on a shelf. There are a few reasons for this, and it all links back to money. Music is a business, one that's becoming increasingly difficult to succeeding. Once bands are tied to labels and act more as a business than an artist, they will sell anything and everything that even has the smallest chance to be purchased to make a profit. For bands like Metallica and Slipknot, merch is not only a passive income asset, but also a way to slap their IP into the brains of as many people as possible. And the most valuable consumer in this case is the fucking soy collector. And metal fans are typically collectors. There is research that shows that. Sources in the description. We collect vinyl, shirts, patches, all that shit. Funko is just tapping into that existing instinct. Only they're just redirecting it to cutesy, homogenized shit, standardized pieces of fucking slop. So it's not patches that are designed and made by artists within the scene who all benefit, and it all circles the money around the actual subculture. Give it to these lovely disgusting piece of shit Funko Pops. But I have nothing against merch. In fact, I've encouraged the purchasing of band merchandise many times. It's just hard not to notice the dystopian aspects of a metal band's merch website reflecting H&M or Amazon, a marketplace where you can buy essentially anything with a logo slapped on the front. That is not art, that's commercialism. To close off Exhibit C, I want to explore the VIP system often used at large-scale stadium shows. The most popular metal bands often have upgrades. Not only is this another way to rinse you of your shekels, but also a practice that divides fans into different wealth classifications. Metal used to be a subculture for outcasts. I don't think you can deny that. The only
financial
barrier to entry was a cheap concert ticket and, God forbid, the smell at the shows. The smell still exists, unfortunately, but the camaraderie that once existed is gone within the mainstream. Another quick insert for some information that I actually missed. So the VIP meet and greet was not a thing in early metal at all. It was introduced in the 2000s by Kiss, who were also just like Disney-fied slop. So let me explain quickly so it doesn't seem like I'm being hypocritical. The subcultural barriers before Kiss were often like knowledge and passion for the scene. When that is replaced with money, it just funnels shekels upwards and introduces people into the scene who think they can throw money at things to become involved in subcultures or scenes or music, that kind of stuff. To kick off Exhibit D, I want to present you with an exercise. These videos are interactive. Close your eyes and think of all the major metal journalism publications, the Loudwires, the Kerrangs, the Rock Feeds, that kind of stuff. Then place the mainstream metal influencers such as Nick Nocturnal into that same field of consciousness. To really focus now, keep those eyes closed and think... Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Regardless of my prepubescent sense of humor, think of the last time you remember any of these lizards presenting a journalistic take or opinion that was shocking or different in any way. I think you will struggle. What used to be countercultural zines, shocking interviews, and actual opinions have morphed into a fucking content farm. Loudwire is the most egregious. It's basically BuzzFeed with metal framing. Top 10 lists, inoffensive takes, and Corey Taylor's opinion on the latest cheese product. It's all slop designed to turn your brain into sludge. Don't get me wrong, the Fact or Fiction series is cool though. The covers of the Kerrangs of the world are shimmery, high-fashion photographs that focus on marketability and attraction. They even feature artists that have zero connection to heavy music. They just share the same aesthetic. The subculture is being diluted into a Urban Outfitters costume right before our very eyes. The reason these outlets do this is very simple. Print is dead. Nobody wants to fucking read anymore. They rely on brand partnership
and in some cases have close relationships with record labels.
YouTube is similar, but for a different reason. Spitting out slop is the best way to line your pockets. Nick Nocturnal, for example, he seems like a good dude. Nothing against him at all. But he is another symptom of the Disneyification, whether he likes it or not. Realistically, all I'd have to do to explain this is just scroll through these soy-face battlefield that is his YouTube thumbnails. But let me yap for a second if that's okay with you. Let me know if that's okay in the comments. I'll wait. Nick is a good example of the reaction economy. You'll probably notice a similar trend whenever he reacts to a new release on stream. His eyes widen, mouth gapes, and each hand firmly grasps his supple cheeks or rounded head. This is the reaction of a toddler, and I'd only assume that's by design. Maybe not, but God forbid, fuck it out. Nick is actually far from the worst culprit of this kind of behavior. I think he's actually pretty genuine with how he reacts. He's just American, God forbid. But it is hard to defend these thumbnails, and these thumbnails are very common all throughout YouTube, especially when it comes to reacting to metal songs. It's so non-offensive, so clean. It's basically scrubbing all the danger off of the metalhead persona, making it perfectly compatible with family-friendly algorithms. He's almost aggressively wholesome. Like, I like it, but I also don't. It scares me. And it does make sense. He caters to the core side of heavy music. And he definitely does deserve a slice of the algorithmic pie. He seems like a good dude. It's just difficult not to include him in a Disneyification video when he is so sanitized. A genre that was built off being dangerous morphed into a wholesome, PG-friendly, family-friendly, happy hobby. Sure, I think he could challenge conventions a little bit more. I think he could be more tapped in, and I think he could push more journalistic integrity outside of just highly agreeable slop. But he is more of a symptom of the Disneyification than a definitive causation. One thing I do despise is the common opinion on gatekeeping amongst these creators. Even the ones I actually tend to enjoy define criticism of corporate bands as simply haters or dirty gatekeepers.
How are these elitists, these gatekeepers, still around? I want every one of these guys to suck on my dick and balls.
Whilst for some reason insulting grime.
Thing I fucking can't stand is grime. For those of you that don't know, grime is a style of English rap that sucks so many balls.
We fucking rub it in
In me grime. Dick Papa Woody, you look like a hoodie.
This is unrelated, but grime is a fucking electronic subgenre. It's not defined by the British accent rapping over the top, you fucking albino chimpanzee. Americans really can't handle the fact that we have created so many distinct genres despite having a tiny population and all being fucking depressed. Moving on, no hate towards Uncle Judy, but if he can shitfling in my language, I can do the same if the take is presented as lazy and biased. Another insert. I have nothing against Nick Nocturnal or Uncle Judy. I like a lot of their stuff. The reason I went harder on Judy is because he actively insults things and people in his videos where Nick is like entirely wholesome. So I feel like I can shitfling and talk shit and take the piss without any risk of needless offense towards him because he does it back. I assume that's kind of his sense of humor. The internet may frame this as like hating or beef, but that is dumb as fuck. I'm simply just taking the piss and criticizing aspects of their content and opinions. They are allowed to have this content and opinion, and my criticism does not reflect my opinion of their entire character. Can't believe I have to say this shit on a platform full of adults, but hey. This may seem like off-topic insults being flung towards figures that I actually quite like, basically burning bridges through my inability to not be aggressively British, but it does relate to the Disneyification, as I believe the breaking down of gatekeeping and the gaslighting that is occurring is one of the key reasons for this phenomenon. The key argument against gatekeeping that is framed by the vast majority of these figures just boils down to insults and the claim that everything should be for everyone. Yeah, sure, fine. But the vast majority on the literature on this subject entirely disagrees with that sentiment. Sarah Thornton argued that subcultures survive on what is known as subcultural capital. This consists of knowledge and authenticity. When the barrier to entry of a subculture becomes a Funko Pop or knowledge of a sanitized slop band disguised as metal, this capital becomes worthless, and the genre loses the social struggle it was once built off of. A healthy sprinkling of gatekeeping simply ensures that the meaning behind the music isn't lost due to people who just want the aesthetic and just want to grift off the aesthetic for money. Why is this always framed as bad, man? Like, they just want dystopian crap, don't they? I think everyone can agree that art becomes vapid when it is stripped of its meaning. We can go even further with Pierre Bourdieu's field of cultural production. He argues that art exists in two fields: the restricted field, basically making art for the sake of art, and the large-scale production field, Disney commercial slop intended to make money. Gatekeeping alongside integrity are some of the few boundaries that keep the restricted field alive. Without that, the merch sales, TikTok virality, and brand safety gets in the way of the creative process, giving us more slop and taking more of our money. When gatekeeping is labelled as entirely negative, in my eyes they are basically demanding that this restricted field be expanded into a large-scale production field, which is therefore only going to lead to sanitized sounds and less creativity because the market often demands safety. Research literally shows that when a niche piece of art is adapted for a mass audience, it loses complexity and appeals to the lowest common denominator. I just wanted to quickly place an insert here in case anyone takes anything in bad faith. I have covered gatekeeping with nuance in my previous hardcore video, and people don't typically understand nuance, so let me explain. I presented gatekeeping as more so negative in the hardcore video due to the racism within the early years of that scene, and the racism is still present in metal, specifically with NSBM, and the same negative thing applies. That is bad. Hardcore is different because bands like Turnstile and Knocked Loose don't present themselves as products in the same way that Slipknot and Sleep Token do. Most hardcore bands are packaged with gatekeeping due to the sincerity within the scene and the way that they consistently get back to the subculture. Regardless, these same theories apply. Low barrier to entry equals dilution, and that is typically bad. The best example would be goth, where for the most part these subcultural aspects have died and just been replaced with fast fashion sheen bollocks. That's the worst thing that can happen. I just wanted to make that clear. Obviously different scenes and subcultures have different relationships with gatekeeping, so that is not just me being a hypocrite, and regardless, my opinions are allowed to change if they so wish. So here we are, the end point of the Disneyification of metal. All the danger from mainstream metal has been algorithmically sapped and replaced with whatever will appeal to the biggest market possible. This works because it is comfortable, easy to consume, and wholesome. But think back to the reason that you got into metal in the first place. I can almost guarantee that it wasn't for its fucking comfortability. The rejection of gatekeeping isn't this inclusive practice that makes the world a better place. It's the opposite. It's the expansion of a genre that I literally got punched in the stomach for enjoying as a kid into a clean algorithmic pile of dog shit, designed for the people that launched that that same fist into my sternum. That might be me projecting my insecurities into a video essay instead of getting therapy. But something I am sure you can agree on is the way in which these corporations are abusing this aesthetic for money. But hey, if you want to be sold slop through the genre of metal, feel free. The gym cells have already got their hands on the metal logo. The metal logo is being plastered everywhere. And guess what? It's literally being stolen from bands. Do you not think this is all related? But yeah, call everybody who subscribes to a small amount of gatekeeping fucking smelly. But I'll have you know I smell absolutely fantastic. So if you are tired of these shimmery slop, Funko Pops and soy-faced thumbnails, the solution is obvious. Unplug. Metal still exists in small spaces. And that is primarily due to sounds and subcultural aspects that basically gatekeep themselves because they're not appealing to the mass market. Stop looking for rebellion in places that are run by corporate marketing teams. I also do want to say, don't get gaslit into submission by people who insult you for caring about the genre you're passionate about. Gatekeeping is obviously heavily nuanced. There are negatives, and in some genres, it actively stomps out creativity, or tries to. An example would be black metal. But hey, guess what? Black metal still does evolve. We have fucking Death Heaven, Ketharak, we have Cemetery, and these figures are all outperforming true cult black metal. If the negative aspects of gatekeeping were as bad as these people made it out to be, these figures just simply would not exist, or they just wouldn't be popular, or they'd be popular amongst other crowds. Perhaps I will cover gatekeeping in more detail in future, and I actually am, because I'm writing that right now. Because there is way more I want to say, because there are negatives, there are positives. I just don't like it being framed as wholly bad, because there's never any sort of reasoning for it being labeled as bad. It's just, oh, don't gatekeep, you're smelly, what are these elitists doing? It's nothing. It's just nothing. There's no reasoning. At least I've provided some literature here. But this yap session is already way longer than I intended it to be. So yes, stay schizo, move in silence, healthily gatekeep all that you love, and most importantly, I will be seeing you in the next video.